Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a newcomer into the temple, coming to us from Imp Games, a self-proclaimed cunning warlock, i.e. independent creator, forging powerful artifacts, aka RPG supplements, and now coming to us with the neon cyberpunk setting for 5e known as Vydal City, the one and only Evan Noone, aka No One. How you doing? How you doing today, man?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on and braving time zone hell to get here. Even though you and I both are on the North American continent, it is a principle.
It wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it's just principle. Because of my sheer unbridled hatred for time zones.
It is tough, especially when you have friends in your gaming groups that live, like, literally on the other side of the planet.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Is it a case where it's on the crossing the Atlantic or Pacific? Because one of them is going to be worse.
Both.
Oh.
Thankfully not in the same group.
Yeah, but you still got
But still.
That's at least one group where you're crossing the international date line, so that can make things interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But one of the traditions around here is opening with the humble beginnings. So I'd like you to walk me through your introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
Yeah, sure. So I've been playing role-playing games and more specifically like tabletop role-playing games since high school, really. And it was my high school physics teacher who actually introduced me to the hobby, which was kind of cool. My physics teacher, he was like one of the coolest teachers I've ever had, and me and my friends, we were talking with him near the end of one of our classes, and he brought up, like having played Dungeons and Dragons before, and all of us we'd heard of the game, but we'd never actually played it. So we started like picking his brain about like, how does the game work? What do you do? Like, what is the sort of like game itself? Because we weren't too familiar with the idea, and he walked us through it and gave us like the most basic rundown you can give, and we were like, okay, say less, we're all in. And we bought the fourth edition starter set, and we got together and played, I think, 2 sessions, and from there I absolutely loved it, and I've never looked back since, really.
It is funny that 4th edition is brought up, because in this place I have called that edition the version I'm supposed to hate, but I don't because the check bounced. Mostly because I defended 4th edition quite a bit back then, and I got my fair amount of shit for it. Especially in some cases where I've said that a lot of people who made the MMO argument when it came to 4th edition did not know how MMOs actually worked. And just happened to say that because World of Warcraft was ubiquitous in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Which I still maintain. Even if people claim, oh, I've gotten 100 hours in World of Warcraft. Yeah, you can eat 100 pounds of sausage and still not know how the sausage is made. By the way, I do not endorse eating 100 pounds of sausage in one sitting. If anyone does that, I take no responsibility. I have to say that for legal reasons.
I can't imagine it will end well, but it will certainly be interesting.
About as interesting as the exploding food critic from Monty Python. But with that in mind, let's shift over into Vydal City. Now,
Sure.
since Vydal City is doing cyberpunk, but you specifically refer to it as neon cyberpunk, and that is a genre that has a wide net. So I think one of the first things I'd like to pick your brain on is what cyberpunk media would you cite as an influence? What would be in the Appendix N for Vydal City? Since, you know, some Blade Runner and Ghost in the Shell, it could be argued to be both cyberpunk works, but they go in completely
Yeah, of
different
course.
directions. So much like how saying that something's high fantasy tells one enough to tell them nothing,
Right.
it's important to nail down what direction of cyberpunk Vydal City is going for.
So when I say neon cyberpunk, what it really means is the aesthetic of the world is the sort of like power system and the culture of the world. So I want you to imagine like a very much like 80s synthwave, like the scrolling wireframe landscapes. Obviously like Cyberpunk 2077 was a big inspiration for this, and the idea that the sort of campaign of Vydal City is structured around various mega corporations that are each focused on a different color of neon, which we'll get into a little later, I imagine. But another movie that, at least in like the initial like starting points for Vydal City, sort of like getting the ball rolling, was the movie Kung Fury, which is like just a hysterical like VHS action movie that has a lot of really hilarious tropes and aesthetics that really inspired this. But the biggest thing, like the piece of media that I can directly tie to the impetus of Vydal City, where I actually first had the idea to do this, is the song "Blinding Lights" by The Weeknd. Because I was driving in the car one day and it came on the radio, and I had the distinct thought, like, man, I wish I could use this song as like ambiance music for D&D, because I think that'd be a really cool vibe to play with. Alas, D&D is high fantasy, this wouldn't work. And then the immediate thought after that was, wait a minute, why don't I just make something where I can do that?
Yeah.
And that is where it started.
I could get that. I'd imagine at least one person's probably brought up the Proto Men to you as well, because I feel like that would be...
Yes, I have listened to the Proto Men as well.
I'm probably gonna have to write a short list of things that will happen before Act 3 is made.
Probably.
You know, including the Devils winning the Stanley Cup.
I wish. Man, I wish.
Yeah, I know it hurts to go that route, but I'm a Wild fan, so I'm used to this kind of pain.
Gotcha.
Because I've had to deal with close but not enough for years.
Just some like heartbreak.
It's look, which is a worse way to lose? Get completely blown out, or blow it in the literal last second?
It's a tough call.
But given that you talk about taking spells, classes, and magic items and putting them in a new context, going from whatever brand of fantasy 5e wants to be this week, that's a whole other kettle of fish I've covered in the past, to this neon cyberpunk with Vydal City. Obviously, some things would need to be reinterpreted or reflavored, or to like And I'd like to delve into some of that and and what changes and what gets what gets reskinned essentially.
Yeah,
And
so the
mhm,
I'd say the important thing to remember, and I guess that this is sort of the way I choose to look at D&D 5e, is that 5e as a system is an excellent framework for you to tie really anything you would like to it. It's really important, I think, to remember that the mechanics are not the themes. The mechanics are not the set dressing. So realistically, like the saying is flavor is free. You can take the rules of 5e and sort of retrofit it to any sort of genre you would like to explore with relatively easy success, I would say. Before Vital City, I actually wrote a Wild West fantasy adventure. And that, again, using the systems in 5e, it wasn't hard to do that. So a lot of the retexturing and reflavoring is kind of just that. It is just reflavoring of the built-in mechanics. I think the biggest thing in Vital City in terms of it as a setting is that the setting is mundane, meaning that there's no like spellcraft and wizards, and instead all of the in-game spells are just the results of neon gadgetry and neon technology. The colors of neon are the different schools of magic. So the all of the mechanics are still there. You don't have to relearn 5e in a different way to explore through Vital City. It really is just a new set dressing for these rules that you can very effectively redress.
I can get that. And since we're delving into that, I'd like to go into some of the pillars and on the player facing side of things and how those are redressed, if at all. Starting with races, both the existing ones and the possibility of you adding new ones, if that's done.
Okay. In Vital City, the sort of like starting point for a lot of the design decisions was okay. This world is a mundane world. The magic doesn't exist in the way that we would normally expect it to exist. In a traditional fantasy game, and the races and species were something that when I was originally deciding, I couldn't figure out if I wanted there to be fantastical species or not. And ultimately, like I kept having to remind myself, hey, this is a mundane world. That's sort of the conceit that you're going for. So I ended up making it so that in the lore of this world, everyone is born human. Like the other fantastical species don't exist in a biological sense. Instead, what most people elect to do in Vital City is that they modify their bodies in some way with these like neon body mods. And how they choose to modify themselves and kit themselves out creates the other like player facing like mechanical species. So even though like biologically everyone is human in the lore, um a dwarf is someone who has taken like very specific body modifications that's like almost like perhaps like an exoskeleton that makes you a lot tougher to deal with and a lot stronger.
Mhm.
uh Elves might have body modifications that like prolong their lifespan and make their skin have this like otherworldly effervescent glowing to it.
Mhm.
And the names of all of these races are actually slang terms for the types of body mods that people have. So if you're walking around with like this like big exoskeleton grafted to your body, people look at you and the slang term for you is, oh, you're a dwarf.
All right. So when it comes to the classes, I think I'd imagine that most of them are in in that similar vein of the of styles of modifications. Uh, but I am curious if there's been a retitling of some of them, or in some cases expanded with subclasses.
Yeah, so there hasn't been any like renaming of classes or anything like that. Like keeping the identity of the class something you would expect was really important when designing a setting like this, because a lot of the elements are so different in terms of the set dressing. It's really important to have the player facing information remain consistent so that players can feel comfortable changing the way they're exploring the classes and races they are familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it came from just offering suggestions for what this class looks like in Vital City. There is a short section in the book that gives you some of those suggestions, like a little paragraph for each class that says, "Oh, like in Vital City, um, paladins, um, they don't necessarily need to have faith in like a divine force, but rather at like an unshakable oath to a cause. And that oath can look like a lot of different things. So I give the example that paladins, like their magic and abilities, like they're almost like super soldiers with what they can do on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
So like they wield these super soldier like abilities. They could work for the VCPD or be a regiment soldier and offer players little pockets in the world that they could help slot these like class identities into.
Mm-hmm.
The weirdest one was Druid, actually, because this is a very tech heavy setting.
Mm-hmm.
So how does a druid fit into that? And ultimately, because the power comes from neon is actually like a natural resource of this world. Its raw form is called noxite, and you mine it out of the ground and you refine it into neon.
Mm-hmm.
So because neon is a naturally occurring resource, druids using neon technology is actually an extension of nature in this world.
Mm-hmm. And given that, you already mentioned this kind of thing with Paladin, but what about with something like Warlock, who, in core the idea with Warlock is they make a pact with some patron to get access to their abilities. In this case, would
So
they be
that
someone who makes a deal with one of the corps?
Yeah, so Warlock is really fun. So the book comes with three new subclasses that give a little bit of expansion to some of the classes in this setting specifically. And Warlock has one of those subclasses. They have the corporate patron, where you literally your pact is with whichever one of the Spectrum corporations you are an employee of,
Mm-hmm.
and they that subclass gives you features that let you do like market manipulation and like fudge the numbers on some of your spells and find ways to get extra spell slots when you shouldn't have extra spell slots, and do a lot of like cooking the books magically.
Mm-hmm.
um but in terms of like extraplanar beings, that's the interesting thing, is that those extraplanar beings still exist. So like the Hells still exist, Elysium still exists, the Feywild still exists, but they exist on a much more inconspicuous level. So they are like hiding in the city. When we talk about like the hells, and we talk about the nine hells, like you're not going to see like oblivion gates opening up and these like huge barbed fiends stepping out onto the streets. Like you're going to see much more subtle influences of the hells. For example, one of the largest gateways to hell in the city is actually a law firm called Lorne, Smythe, Tark, and Brim, and like devils serve as like lawyers almost, and influence the city subtly.
Yeah, I probably could channel the last season of Angel regarding that. But
Yeah.
with that in mind, uh, you mentioned that there are three new subclasses, and you already brought up one of them. What could you tell me about the playstyle of the other two and what they bring to their class?
Yeah. So like I just said, the corporate warlock lets you do a lot of number fudging with your spell casting. The other two are for the sorcerer and the rogue. The sorcerer has the neon body sorcerer origin, which is all about being very bright and colorful, a lot of prismatic spells, like blinding people with bright lights. So like it, I think the most, or rather, how do I want to say this? The closest analog to it would be like a wild magic sorcerer. But whereas a wild magic sorcerer is all about the chaos of it and just anything can happen, the neon body sorcerer is all about like the that letting your inner lights dance free and being like bright and colorful and shining all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the that sorcerer gets the ability to create like areas of like spotlights that blind people. You get enhanced dark vision that lets you see through magical darkness. They get a cool ability that lets them cast like mini versions of prismatic spray. So like a lot of these very colorful and bright effects.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the rogue has the fence subclass, whose whole thing is moving people and merchandise across the city without getting caught. Like moving illicit goods or helping people get to where they're not supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the rogue subclasses are very insular in that it is singularly focused on the rogue. Like I think the original version of the 5e assassin had a feature that let you like be a master infiltrator and like get proficiency with disguise kits and like mimicking people's voices and infiltrating, but only for the rogue. So it was hard for the rogue to sort of tie that in with their party's other skills.
Mm-hmm.
The fence sort of takes that aspect and turns it up to 11 and almost becomes like a support rogue. So they're able to conceal objects on their body that can't be detected unless they're restrained. They have like a little mini, almost like a paladin aura that gives people around them a bonus to stealth, deception, and persuasion. That's their act natural feature, where they're basically like coaching people on how to lie and get around things.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a lot of like charisma based abilities and ways to protect their allies outside of combat, and a few tools to help protect them inside of combat as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they are a very like support focused rogue.
Yeah, I can get that. And given that, it's funny you mentioned the assassin because knowing the history of D&D, the assassin is probably one of the most cursed archetypes since it's one that's been tried many a times and results have not always been great.
They've been mixed.
Pre-3 assassin was one of the more infamous cases of completely forked. I'd say the only archetype that's had a more unfortunate reputation is psychics, because
Yeah.
like early D&D psionics was completely busted, uh, to the point where you could get disintegrate very easily. Yeah, you'd be spending the majority of your psychic points to use it, but it still disintegrates.
Yeah, like there shouldn't be a point in the game where you get that and be like, yeah, even though it uses all of my resources, it is the most optimal thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in some editions, it was even worse. There was a whole separate combat system just for psionic combat,
Oh, that's such a crazy concept.
which worked about as well as when, say, Shadowrun had the whole Astral and Matrix initiative combat systems, which
Uh-huh.
nobody really likes in that system because you're asking the GM to double or perhaps triple down in terms of what he's managing.
Yeah, it's just way too much bookkeeping.
Yeah, and I'm fine with a bit of bookkeeping. It comes with the territory, but I don't think I'm fine with the idea of spinning plates while Saber Dance is playing. I would make a terrible juggler, is what I'm saying. But since you mentioned that neon or neon sight, and the colors of it are somewhat analogous to the schools of magic. I'd like to pick your brain when it comes to the particular schools or spheres of magic in Core 5e and what their equivalent form of neon would be.
Yeah. So there's another section in the book that there is a whole chapter that talks about how do you take the core elements of the game and redress them for this setting. So there's that little section on classes that we talked about. There's a section on the races and species. There's also a section for magic. Each of the 8 schools of magic have their own color of neon.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to go from top to bottom on that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Right, right at the top,
Conjuration.
You've got Conjuration. Conjuration is our. Let me just double check, just make sure I'm telling you the correct answer. Mm-hmm. That would be. That would be yellow. Yellow is Conjuration. Right. So, yellow is used by Angstrom Construction. And they use it to literally build buildings overnight.
Mm-hmm. All right. Necromancy.
Necromancy is blue. And it is used by Bezdek Pharmaceutical. So it is a color that is used in a lot of healing spells, spells that raise the dead, and a lot of like medicines in this world use blue neon for that.
Oh, all right. Evocation.
Evocation. I mean, I think you can guess what color evocation is.
Yeah, for the sake of consistency, I still have to ask.
Yeah, that is red. That is red neon is evocation. That's your fireballs. That's your mystical weapons laced with red neon, just causing destruction.
Yeah. So, and hang on, because my tab is being a bit uncooperative. So sorry about that.
No problem.
Abjuration.
Abjuration is green. Abjuration is used by the Graph Independent Trust. They're the bank of the city, so they use green neon as like security systems and security measures. It can make like hard like force fields and barriers.
Mm-hmm. Transmutation.
Transmutation is orange. That is used by Ogden Automotive. So orange neon is actually really, really effective as a source of fuel. And it can take matter and alter it into other types of matter. It can alter it into energy. So Ogden Automotive like builds their engines with orange neon because it simply is the most efficient way to get energy.
Yeah. And transmutation.
That is orange. Yeah, transmutation is orange.
Divination.
Divination is a white neon, so that's like your information technologies. Webcom is the company that does this. They actually have a like an internet type network called the Lattice, which is just like a spider web of white neon lines just threading across the city, connecting devices to each other.
Would you say it would be visually similar to that interface setup that the first Watch Dogs had? You know, the trailer that was the biggest lie told around
Oh
the
yes, I never realized it, but yeah, it definitely has a striking similarity to that.
world. Oh, so enchantment.
Enchantment. Enchantment is violet neon. So violet neon is probably just biologically speaking one of the more dangerous ones to work with because it can alter your mental state to such a dramatic degree, because that's where your like charm person, your dominate person spells come from. So it can be very dangerous to work with from that angle. But the Verdict Minds Academy, which is the Spectrum Corporation that sort of develops Violet Neon, uses it to allow their students and staff to do what's called deep diving, which sort of lets them, like psychonauts, dive into their own subconscious to help develop ideas faster and more effectively.
Would it, given that, would it be possible for someone to do something akin to Inception, where they're going in and either stealing someone's secrets or planting ideas in someone's head?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In the section that sort of explains the Verdict Minds Academy, there is a little blurb that says, "Oh, that is, I wouldn't say that's a regular practice, but that is certainly something you need to worry about."
Which is probably why there's. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if there's training methods that say VIPs go through to try and minimize that problem. Essentially,
Yeah.
the psychic equivalent of cybersecurity.
Yeah, kind of. And in that case, you might go through Webcom for that because they sort of run like the information network of the city, and they have their sort of like Netwatch equivalent. They're called spiders that like keep tabs on how information is being used throughout the city.
Yeah, and given that, given the fact that we're dealing with a very cyberpunk adjacent city, what is the presence of AI? Is it a case where it's something that exists but is highly regulated, a la Mass Effect? Is it a case where AI is the stuff of nightmares, a la Cyberpunk and the Black Wall? What's the approach that you take?
The I would say the important thing is that the book doesn't give you a hard line stance on you can include AI, you shouldn't include it, because ultimately it depends on the corporations that you're choosing to interface with in your game, right? A certain corporation would be more open to something like that, whereas others not so much. Like Bezdek Pharmaceutical might shy away from something like that because a lot of their research is geared towards, like the actual physical bodies of people and like the healing of ailments. So like AI might not be something they're interested in, but Webcom certainly uses AI and robotics in their security of the Lattice network. their spider agents that go around like monitoring the network literally have like AI combat drones with them that help them channel their like spell casting effectively. So like AI can be as prevalent as you want it to be in this setting. So like if you want to make a character that is an artificial intelligence or utilizes an artificial intelligence as part of their class identity, absolutely you can go for it. There is nothing telling you you can't do that.
Yeah. The and it's one of those things where obviously AI in a cyberpunk setting opens up a lot of questions. So it's good
Mhm.
to have that um, under lock and key. Now, in some of the material that was in the promo package, there was talk about vehicle crafting as well as chase sequences. And
Oh yeah.
chase sequences is one of those things that a lot of people have attempted, and some results have been better than others. But but there's no standards, so it's all over the place. You know, for every
Yeah,
Haven, you've got a
absolutely.
bunch of um, D20 Moderns attempts. So let me get the first one out of the way. With chase combat, are you still using the grid, or are you going abstract theater of the mind, or is it a table decision?
Case combat is with the Vital City rules, strictly theater of the mind.
Okay.
Simply to allow a lot more narrative descriptions for how things work because cars are moving so fast
Hmm.
all the time and are constantly weaving in and out of traffic and with each other in order to for a chase to feel cinematic and feel like a car chase that using a grid just takes away from that, honestly. It restricts what you envision the chase looking like. So yeah, car chases using the Vital City rules are strictly theater of the mind.
Hmm. So with that in mind, uh, when it comes to the chases, um, how do you handle it so that they do end up being something that starts and ends quickly? As you talk about how wanting to have them be about 3 to 5 rounds of combat.
Yeah, there's a little blurb when you read the chase combat section and like the vehicle crafting section that
Hmm.
says if you choose to run a car chase, it should not overstay its welcome. It should be very short. Car chases are meant to be supplemental to combat, not replace combat entirely. So that they shouldn't overstay their welcome. And the way we achieve that, and with all of the people who have play tested the car chases, um, the the best way we do that with the rules in this book is a simple line of text that says you are always in range for what you want to do. During a car chase, ranges are abstracted. So on your turn, when you want to do something, if it's make an attack, cast a spell, or try something else, you always assume by default that you are in range to do the thing you want to do.
Hmm.
So like you don't have to sit there and do the math and be like, okay, how far am I away from the car that I want to impact with my action? No, you're always in range to do what you want to do.
Hmm.
The only kicker is that um, individual creatures have total cover because they're in a vehicle.
Yes.
So unless you do something creative or interesting to get around that, you have a target, which is the car that you're in a chase with.
Would that total cover apply to more open vehicles as well, like say a motorcycle?
No, it wouldn't. There's actually a little caveat that says creatures only benefit from the total cover if their car can provide that. And then there's like a little parenthetical that says like creatures on a motorcycle, for example, would not benefit from the total cover.
Hmm. Yeah, I can get that. And the way it's read here, it sounds like the key thing is everyone who is involved in these chase scenes is fighting for position.
Yeah, that's a unique condition that only applies to car chases, called position. And each round of a car chase, you do a speed contest with the other car, to determine if you have the position condition that round. And all position means is that you are in a generally advantageous spot compared to your opponent, and certain actions you take or maneuvers you want to do, the unique actions and maneuvers that come with car chases. Some of them require you to be in position to use them. Some of them give you extra benefits if you use them while in position.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think a great example is one of the maneuvers that you can choose to do while you're in a car chase and driving is the lose them maneuver. So like at the start of the round you can decide, okay, I want to try and like leave the chase. If you use the lose them maneuver, you have to use that 3 times in the chase, and then the chase ends and you escape. But you can only use that if you're in position.
Yeah. Now, in a lot of cyberpunk games that are focused around a particular city, whether that be the cyber fantasy version of Seattle that you see in Shadowrun, the everything within and around Night City. There's always the premise that you're playing as essentially as mercenaries that are contracted by either companies through some sort of intermediary, whether it be a fixer or what's known in Shadowrun as Mr. Johnson. Yes, even if they're a woman, they're always referred to as Mr. Johnson. That's how it works. um, who is essentially hiring them out, but legally speaking is providing plausible deniability. But
Yeah.
within a lot of those games, there's some sort of mission generator and a lot of mission-based design. With that in mind, with Vydal City, do you plan on putting a generator of sorts to kind of provide the opening job, if that can be done on the fly for GMs?
Yeah, so there's actually kind of like a couple different avenues you can take with Vital City for that are with the book. Like you mentioned with like the fixers in Night City and Mr. Johnson in Shadowrun, Vital City has its version of that. They're called switchers. Um, and they sort of they manage individual citizen contracts, and they divvy them out to what are called dead cells, which are sort of like your mercenary faction in the city. Those are the dead cells. And these switchers are the ones that dead cells get their jobs from.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go the mercenary route and you want to go the more corporate route, you have 8 different Spectrum corporations to choose from as your sort of like quest giver or like narrative driving force.
Mm-hmm.
And each faction has its own section. Each company and each independent faction has their own section in the book that describes, here are the things this faction is interested in. Here are the things that they would probably send you out to do. If you're playing a character involved with that faction, here are the things that probably are true for your character. So there's angles that way you can take.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the more fun ways is to use the last chapter in the book, which is the Vital City Legends, which is a collection of one-shot adventures. So like pre-made one-shots that you can just sit down with minimal prep and you can run. And the reason I say those are the most fun is because those weren't just written by me. Those were written by other independent TTRPG creators as well. So to name a couple of people that have written an adventure for the book, Casey Pappas from the Mage Hand High Five podcast, the DM for Mage Hand High Five, he wrote one of the adventures in the back of the book. Elliot Davis from Many Sided Media, he wrote a level 20 adventure. And the gentleman from the We Open With podcast also wrote one of the adventures in the book as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. And with that in mind, one of the other things that was on the Kickstarter page that I wanted to kind of delve into is street cred, because when you're dealing with an urban setting, whether it be urban fantasy or urban science fiction, one of the big things is going to be the fact that everybody knows somebody who knows somebody, and it looks like street cred is how this is handled within Vydal City. So how does that work here?
So in the book, there are a collection of optional rules that you can choose to use or not. Totally up to your table if you want to implement them. Like car chases and cars customization are one of those optional rules. If you decide, hey, they're not for us, we're probably not going to run a game that will use anything like that. Absolutely, there's no pressure for you to use it. There are a couple of optional rules that sort of take that angle, like you just mentioned, of like people knowing someone who knows someone. One of those is street cred, which is, think of them like mini feats. Like they're not as powerful as full feats that you would get on an ability score improvement, but at GM caveat, or GM fiat rather, when a GM decides that it's a good time or an appropriate time narratively to do this, they can award a character with what's called a street cred tag. And I give a couple of examples of when it would be appropriate for a GM to do this. For example, if a character rolls a nat 20 on a pivotal roll, that would be an appropriate time to award them with street cred. Or like a character plays a major part in completing an important story arc for themselves or someone else. Or like a character repeatedly proves that they are very, very good at a specific skill or task. Like these would all be appropriate times for a GM to say, you know what, you have proven yourself enough in the world. You have some street cred now. And different street cred tags do different things, but they're very minor. Like I'll give you an example. The crack shot street cred tag says that your aim is nothing to sneeze at. When you make a ranged attack, you can ignore half cover. And that's all it does. It's like a super minor benefit, but the GM can award that to you if you repeatedly prove you're really good at making like crazy shots that are like impossible to hit. Or like you roll a nat 20 on a pivotal like ranged attack. That would be a good time for the GM to say, you know what? After this, people are going to know you as a crack shot. And the other way you can sort of use these tags is if you don't want to have them have the mechanical benefit, you can have NPCs know the characters by their tags first and foremost, and have that sort of like color their interactions. So like the crack shot tag, like we were just talking about, like you can have an NPC who maybe the players have never met before, but one of the players is a crack shot, and this NPC knows that, even if he doesn't know that player's name.
All right, I can get that. And since
there's another really fun way to do something like this, and it's called I know a guy, which is another optional rule. And it's just a little table. Every time you level up, you get a contact, and you can spend that contact whenever you want to roll on the I know a guy table to maybe get like a favor from some random NPC that you create on the spot. That you say, oh, I know a guy who can help with this, and you spend one of your contacts to do that.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, with that in mind, what are you shooting for as far as a page count for the book?
Right now, the book is looking to be around 105 pages.
I could certainly see that. I do hope, and I'm not expecting it immediately, but I do hope down the road you consider making like a YouTube or a Spotify playlist of the sound of Vydal City, because when you're dealing with this particular brand of cyberpunk, the scoring is just as important. I'm not expecting you to have
that's such a fun idea.
I'm not expecting you to have a bunch of customs tracks or anything like that, but something akin to what Against the Dark Master or Mork Borg have done, where they've put up different musics to kind of establish a tone. Like I know.
But yeah, like have like just a general soundtrack of like I might put something together that says when I'm imagining Vital City, this is the music I'm hearing in my head, and just like fill a playlist with a bunch of songs.
Yeah, the guy behind Amplitera, which I've covered on this channel in the past, also did something like that. But
that's a very fun idea.
Against the Dark Master and Mork Borg are the big examples of that, because they are intrinsically tied to the styles of music that they're drawing upon. In the case of Against the Dark Master, it's fantasy-laced power metal, in particular, and Blind Guardian especially. I have that on Word of God. And in the case of Mork Borg, it is very much the doom and black metal scene in Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But not to mention, in the case of Mork Borg, you have the whole concept of album crawls, which is just making a dungeon crawl themed after a metal album. I had explored the concept myself with some folk by interpreting the Megadeth album Rust in Peace as essentially a dungeon. And given the impact of things like the Proto Man, it's certainly something worth exploring, I'd say. But what would you be shooting for as far as a release window?
You're talking about like release window, like soup to nuts, the book is done and it's ready to go out?
Yeah, at the very least, the PDF version. Obviously, the physical version, that's going to involve a few more moving parts.
Specific release date right now is hard to say, right? The Kickstarter campaign still has 2 weeks to conclude, and based on how that finishes, that is going to determine the how quickly I can accelerate the timeline. I can say this though, the PDF for the most part, I would say, is 85% done right now. So realistically, like I don't want to put a specific date on it yet, just to disappoint people later on if it doesn't happen. But realistically, the PDF will be done within, I want to say, 2 or 3 months. And then from there, working through the book. But what is it? I believe on the Kickstarter page, it says that the PDF will be made available on drivethrurpg.com at its standard price at the same time that backers receive the PDF. So right now, the abstract timeline says that around 3 months, the PDF will be ready to go. It all depends on how the Kickstarter shakes out, honestly, and there will be a more accurate timeline once the Kickstarter concludes and I start putting up updates through there.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get that, and I will be looking forward to seeing how it develops. And since you brought up Kung Fury, maybe down the road we'll actually get those laser raptors in the Viking Age. Okay, how could I not make that joke?
I mean, you have to. It's right there.
Yeah. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens around here. And anytime...
Thank you so much for inviting me to this. This was a lot of fun.
Yep. And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say,
much appreciated.
Here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged. And, of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, stay fucking frosty, everybody.